Okay, back again. We saw that most of the money in M2, as well as in M1, over half the money in M1, and most of the money in M2 by far is money in bank accounts and different kinds of financial accounts. And now we learned about bank reserves, excess reserves, required reserves. Now we can look at money creation through the banking system, and that's going to be through a process known as the money multiplier. So we have the spending multiplier and the tax multiplier for fiscal policy. We're going to have the money multiplier that's going to be eventually used for monetary policy. And the money multiplier looks at the increase in the money supply that can be generated by a certain amount of excess reserves. So if you loan out excess reserves, again, that's what banks do. Banks do loan out some of their excess reserves. That's how they make money, pay their bills, and make profit for the shareholders. Excess reserves are loaned out. That money very likely will be redeposited, and a portion of that money will be very likely be loaned out, and so on and so on and so on. So eventually, money gets circulated. It gets deposited. A portion gets loaned out. It gets redeposited. A portion gets loaned out, and it grows and grows and grows in terms of the total size. So to show this, I want to go through a similar exercise I did with the spending multiplier. I did different rounds of economic activity, and these would be rounds of banking activity, pretty much two things, making a loan and making a deposit. So we're going to have, say, $1,000 in cash that may be found under your mattress, lucky you, and then you take it down to your bank and you deposit it into your checking account, your demand deposit. And so if you take your $1,000 down here and you make a deposit, this would be a deposit round. Well, that's going to be put into the bank. And that'll be a demand deposit right here. And I'll put a plus $1,000. Now, what the bank has to do is they have to divide it up into two categories, excess and required. That came in as deposit. Money that's in as deposited, the Federal Reserve says a portion of it has to be held as required reserves. Now, the required reserve ratio is given as 10%. That's a nice, easy number to use. And so the bank would take 10% of the $1,000, which is $100, and put it over here. And we'll assume there's dollar signs for all these. The other amount, the other 90%, would be excess reserves. Now, there's no loan in this round. We'll have the next round to be a loan, and so I'll put no change, and C for no change. And there's also going to be no change for M1. Why? Because M1 did not change. So prior to this deposit, if the only money we had was this $1,000 in cash, so the $1,000 in cash under your mattress would be an M1. Again, then it gets deposited into the checking account. Well, demand deposits are also part of M1. So M1 is still $1,000. It's not money. It's not cash anymore. It was cash under your mattress, currency. When it goes into a bank, we no longer count the currency, but we do count the demand deposit. So it's still going to be $1,000, just that in this round here, the deposit round, all of M1 in this example is all in the demand deposit. So no change in M1, still 1,000. The next round is going to be a loan round. And let's assume, for argument's sake, that the bank's going to loan out all $900 of excess reserves, just to make it easy. So when it loans it out, it comes over here, and we have a loan of $900. That means someone walked to the bank, and they borrowed $900 in cash, maybe to buy a new laptop for their business, a small business loan. The moment that cash walks out the bank in that person's pocket, it's going to be part of M1. So we still got the $1,000 in the demand deposit. That's M1. And now we have $900 in cash. So it's not there. It's now there. So now M1 is $1,900. Required reserves have not changed. There's still $100 sitting in the bank vault. Excess reserves have gone down by $900. No change in demand deposit. Whoever deposited that money, it's still in the checking account. The cash may not be in the vault, but it's still in the checking account. The next round is going to be deposit round. Let's say the bank's gonna, let's say whoever borrowed that money buys the laptop. Whoever sold the laptop will deposit that money into a bank. It could be this bank that had the first deposit. It could be another bank, doesn't matter. But deposit of the $900 that was loaned out and spent comes right here. Well, whatever bank that gets that $900, they have to divide it up between excess reserves and required reserves. The ratio is still 10%, so 10% of that would be 90. And 90 minus 900 is 810. No loan was made in that round, and no change in M1. The configuration has changed. Now all of it is in the bank again. It's now 900 here, and that deposit 1,000 there. Right now, there's no currency in M1 because it's all in a bank. But the number is still 1,900, like it was here. Next round, we have a loan round. And let's say they're going to loan out the entire $900, or sorry, entire $810 of excess reserves. So that money is taken out of excess reserves. There's no change in required reserves. There's no deposit in this round. And the moment that money walks out in someone's pocket is $810 as a loan, it's now part of M1. So M1 is now 900, it's now 810, and it's also the 1,000. So it'll be 1,900, add 810 to that, and that'll be M1. Keeps growing. Every set of rounds, we get more and more money out there in circulation in terms of bank accounts. Next round is going to be deposit round. And so the $810 that was loaned out here gets redeposited over here. And then we got to take 10% of that, get my calculator out. So we have $810 times 0.1, that'll be, that's not right. Yeah, that's right, $81. I could have done that in my head. What was I thinking? Whoops. And then 810 minus 81 equals 729. So $810 in the third deposit gets broken up between $729 for excess reserves, $81 for required reserves. No loans in this round and no change in M1. It's all M1 is all now in bank accounts again. And then so on and so on and so on. We make another loan here of $810. Wrong spot. No change in demand deposits. We take the loan money out of here, excess reserves, all $729, I'm sorry. That's why I'm not in banking. I make too many math errors. And then required reserves. It's also why I'm not doing accounting either. No change in required reserves here. And the moment that money is loaned out, right here, 729, it now becomes part of M1. M1 just keeps growing and growing and growing. Now, just like with a spending multiplier, how many rounds can we do? An infinite number of rounds. I can take 10% money forever and never get to zero. But we are converging to zero. All these numbers are getting closer to zero in every single category. And even though it's an infinite series, again, if it converges to zero, we can get a sum for that. There's actually a footnote in your book that shows you that. So if you sum an infinite series, it's going to grow to some finite number. And so what it's going to grow to is that this is going to eventually get down, if we look at total, this is going to eventually get down to a total of $9,000. This eventually also get to $9,000 with the same numbers. Your change in required reserves will eventually, if you add them all up, it eventually get to the $1,000 that was initially deposited. These cancel out, right? That'll all be zero. And this is 1,000 more than these numbers here, and so this would be 10,000. If you look at the totals. So the initial $900 of excess reserves multiplied 10 times to give us the total money creation of 9,000. We started with $1,000 of M1, we ended up with 10,000. We have the original 1,000 right here, and then we add up all these numbers, 9,000. And you can see it's all in demand deposits right here at the very end. So money multiplier, I'm going to use MM for that, tells us the potential increase in M1 based on a starting amount of excess reserves. And it's a very simple calculation. If you sum this infinite series, it gets summed to that equation. So your money multiplier is very simple. It's 1 divided by the required reserve ratio. And let me come back to the last part of this lecture.